Hi y'all, welcome to Common Ground for Texans, our October meeting. My name's Dan Eckham, I'm secretary of the group, and you can find our website at cg4tx.org. We are a group that promotes voter rights and benefits and occasional reforms for elections, and we also sponsor some dialogue and discussion from people across the political spectrum. We value civility very highly, and we hope and expect that you'll maintain a respectful tone in conversation and in our questioning period at all times. Please assume that there are Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Libertarians, Greens, others here today, and speak with the according respect for all types of persuasions. Today we're happy to have Dixie Davis from the League of Women Voters Austin area. She is the Director of Advocacy, and we thought we'd hear from her about what's going to be on the ballot this November in Austin. Not just the races that we've all been hearing about, governor, Senate, House, and so on, but the bond proposals and the amendments and all the other things that are, some of which are unique to Austin and to the state of Texas. And so without further ado, we'll hear from Dixie for a while, and then we'll have some questions for the audience. So, and also, if anybody didn't get any handouts, Dixie brought some great handouts with her, so raise your hand if you didn't pick up one at the back. Mary can hand those out. It looks like most people got them. Excellent. There's also coffee and cookies at the back, and help yourself to those. So, introducing Dixie Davis.
Hello, thank you.
Hi.
Thank you for having me here. I am the new Director of Advocacy for the League of Women Voters Austin area. So the League is an all-volunteer, nonpartisan political organization founded by suffragists in 1919. The League encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government and influences public policy through education and advocacy. So by nonpartisan, we mean that we never support or oppose any political candidate or party. We may choose to support or oppose policy issues, and we come to those decisions through study and consensus. So you have this handout. The first 3 pages are what is likely going to be in our voter's guide, which is a free, nonpartisan publication that will be available shortly before early voting. You can find it online on our website, lwvaustin.org. You can also find printed copies at local libraries and inserted into the Austin Chronicle in the week of October 26th. So we're going to be talking about the 11 ballot measures or the propositions that will be on the City of Austin ballot in November. The first 7 are bonds, that's A through G. The next 2, H and I, are charter amendments. And then the final 2, J and K, are citizen-initiated ordinances. So the charter amendments and the petitions, the citizen-initiated petitions, are kind of more complicated than the bonds. So I'm actually going to start there and come back to the bonds later because those are a little bit more straightforward. So let's begin on, if you want to read along, on page 3, the charter amendments. So this is H and I. So I know a lot of you are involved in local politics, but I'm going to keep things a little basic just so everybody's on the same page. So the city charter is like the city constitution. It lays out all the rules for government. It can be amended every 2 years, and the 2018 Charter Review Commission was organized by the City Council to make recommendations for amendments to the City Council. So they gave their report to City Council in May of this year. They made 9 recommendations, and the City Council chose to place 2 on the ballot. So the first one is H, and it deals with the timing of planning commissioner appointments. So the planning commission is a all-volunteer 13-member commission Commissioners are appointed by City Council, and their job is to make and amend a master plan for the city, recommend approval and disapproval of proposed zoning changes, control land subdivision within neighborhood planning areas, and submit a list of recommended capital improvements to the council. So, we've got to do a little bit of history. This summer, Ken Paxton, the Texas State Attorney General, sued 8 of the 13 members of the commission because they had ties to real estate or land development. So if we go back further, in 1994, Austin voters approved an additional bit of language to the city charter regarding the planning commissioners. And it says, a minimum of 2/3 of the members shall be lay members and not directly or indirectly connected with real estate and land development. So I believe that means only 4 of the 13 can have any kind of ties to real estate. So Ken Paxton is saying, no, there's 8 of them that have ties, you can't do that. So the city then said, okay, well, we'll just get rid of some of these people. But then there was some confusion as to whether or not the city council had the authority to do that. And that's because the city charter language around the planning commission wasn't clear on if that was possible, like if they could remove people or not, or if the council could determine the timing or the length of time for those appointments. So the Charter Review Commission recommended a change to the charter that would make commissioners have a term of 2 years, and the timing of appointments, as well as the process for removing commissioners prior to expiration of term, shall be established by ordinance. So that basically gives the authority to City Council to vote to remove someone early. So that's what that one is about. So it's mainly to address that issue. The next amendment is I. I've heard this referred to a lot as the housekeeping amendment. It basically, it fixes non-substantial capitalizations, spelling errors, grammar errors, and typos that are throughout the city charter. It's really not a big deal. And if you would like to see the specific changes, on the back of your sheet, the first link is a city ordinance that lists everything that's on the ballot. So you can actually go in and read the specific changes to the charter for both Prop H and Prop I, if you're so inclined.
Yes. So if for some weird reason this did not pass, they would not make these corrections?
Yeah, they would not make the corrections.
I can't believe we have to vote on this. Okay.
Yes, but that's why, so they want to do all of these little changes throughout the whole thing, so they do it all at once, so you don't have to vote repeatedly. But yeah, it counts as a change to the charter, and you have to vote on the changes to the charter.
Okay. The grammar counts as a change to the charter.
Well, or typo.
Typo.
Okay.
Yeah. So for example, they want to go through the whole charter, and wherever it says the word city, they want to capitalize city. Because I guess the technical name of Austin is the city of Austin. So things like that.
Yeah.
And other errors.
So, again, what is the reason that it has to be put to a vote?
So any
Just
kind of
because
change
it's
to
a
the
change?
yeah, any kind of change to the charter.
Gee.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's a pretty simple amendment to vote on. So the charter can be amended every 2 years. So if one or both of these amendments passes, we won't vote again on charter amendments until 2020. If neither of them pass, we have possibly an opportunity to vote in 2019, but that's at the discretion of the council of what they choose to put on the ballot. We can talk about what didn't make it on the ballot. Is that of interest to you? Okay. So let's move on to the citizen-initiated petitions. Those are J and K. These have had a lot of news, and they're kind of confusing. Both of these received over 30,000 signatures. Prop J deals with comprehensive land development code revisions. So you've probably heard about Code Next in passing, or you may know a lot. So the last large comprehensive land development code change was in 1984, and the land development code deals with what, where, when, and how you can build stuff in the city. Since 2012, the city has been working on Code Next, which would have been a replacement for that 1984 laws. There were a lot of people who had issues with both the content and the process of Code Next, and they wanted more public input in the process, so they started this petition to get this proposition on the ballot. So first, I just want to say, technically, Code Next is scrapped. In August, the council decided to put that aside, and they directed the city manager to start a whole new process of doing a new comprehensive revision. So what does all that mean for this proposition? So this would be a vote to be able to vote on future comprehensive land development code changes. So any ones that come down the pipe later. And it would also include a waiting period. So I have to kind of like give this calendarized idea of how this is going to work. So let's do an example. Let's say in May of 2019, the City Council approves a big comprehensive code package revision. So that's the first step. They approve it. Then we enter a waiting period. We wait until the next council election. Council members are elected for 4-year terms. Council elections are every other year. I believe they're even-numbered years, and so it's like 5 council members are elected at a time. So we wait till the next council election, in which case that would be November of 2020. After that, we wait until June following that that council election. So now we're in 2021. And then from there, we vote on those approved changes at the next available municipal election. So in that case, it would be November of 2021. So during that time, any of those approved changes by council do not go into effect until they have been voted and approved by residents. When we vote on the changes in their entirety. You can't vote them for like little bits. But in the meantime, so this proposition only affects comprehensive, so a complete overhaul of the rules. But the city council can still change like individual zoning laws here and there throughout the city in the meantime. So, to recap, we went from May 2019 to November 2021. That's kind of the long end of the scale. It could also be shorter. But when you read the ballot language, that's why it says it takes between 1 to 3 years. Now, that might seem like a long time, but the waiting period between the initial council approval and the public vote is there to educate the public on the changes, so that the public can, rally their supporters or opponents. Maybe they can try to get some changes in there. Maybe they can, vote out or vote in other council members during this process. And if anyone's ever worked on a campaign, you know that a year goes by really fast. So that's that. So you're basically going to have to decide, what matters to you in this process for land development code changes. Is this a time period that you feel you're comfortable with, that's a good thing or not? So it's really, that's up to you. Yes.
Is there a different time period they're currently working under? I don't know if this is just completely new or they're revising
So-
something that's in place.
So currently, the public does not vote on comprehensive land development code changes. So in that case, it is just the council, through review, will pass something. And that's what this process has been so far.
Is this revision based on any other city's experience, or was this just developed?
Oh, like this proposition, this ordinance?
Yeah.
I don't believe so. And there was also some controversy as to whether or not this was legal, like if it's legal for, in the state of Texas, for citizens to vote on zoning changes or land development code changes. So there's some controversy on that, but ultimately it is on the ballot. So if that is challenged later, I don't know. But I don't know of other cities that do this. Are there any other questions on this one?
Is there currently a waiting period required for the city in their voting?
No, but they do have to have hearings and public input. But
There's
this
no-
has been going on 6 years
Oh,
for the Code Next part, and they released several drafts of the plan.
Mhm.
I think they got up to like 3 drafts, and in between they had lots of public input. But that also brought out the people who did not like what they saw or had concerns, and that's how we got to this point. So they felt that, you know, City Council wasn't taking in the considerations of residents as much as they would like to see. All right. Okay, let's talk about Prop J. Oh, I'm sorry, Prop K. So this one refers to a big city audit of everything the city does. This was another citizen-initiated petition. There's also some confusion behind it. But let's talk about what's actually in the ordinance language and what it means. So the city has a city auditor. That city auditor gets a yearly budget and they choose what they want to audit that year. Sometimes the city hires independent auditors to audit other things. The city auditor has to abide by state comptroller auditing standards and city ethics standards, and sometimes he gets double checked by an outside auditor as well. But the city auditor does not have the budget or resources to do a full audit of everything. So that's where this comes in. This prop, if approved, would hire an independent, qualified, outside auditing consultant at a cost to $1 to $5 million. That's the estimate from the city. But proponents say that it could save as much as 10% of the yearly city budget. So the yearly city budget is a little bit under $4 billion. So they're saying the savings would cover that cost. So the purpose of the audit is to find permanent efficiencies and tax savings in the budget. It wants to focus on like the big ticket items that take up a large amount of the revenue in the budget, but it will look at everything. The auditor will submit to City Council a government efficiency blueprint, which has recommendations and trend analysis and all that sort of thing. Again, if you really wanted to look at all of the language, it is in that first link on that very back page. That lists the goals and the requirements for the auditor not to be connected to City Council and the qualifications for that auditor.
And this is a one-time thing.
Okay. Yes. But having read the ordinance language, nowhere in there does it say specifically it is a one-time thing, nor does it lay out a timeline. that's a personal concern of mine. So yes, while it's being pushed as a one-time thing, I do not see the words "one time" listed in the language. Okay. So the results of this audit, could lead to a lot of savings. It's not something that the city currently is able to do. I do feel like because this group is really interested in government transparency and money in politics, I feel like I should address some things about the history of this. So this petition was funded by a single political action committee. And that political action committee was funded by another political action committee. And the donors to that political action committee are unknown. Like, those have not been made public. So there's, which legally is normal. However, in Austin we have an ordinance that passed in 2016 saying that that those names should be public. No one has challenged that. So, because of that, because those names are unknown, there have been a lot of rumors about who's behind this. But the fact is, we don't know. So anything that anybody tells you, it's just rumor. There's no real source. But we do know that there are many groups who are publicly supporting the audit from a variety of political leanings. So, maybe that's something you want to take into consideration because of the money in politics thing. Are there any questions?
Do we know where the money would come from to fund this?
To fund this, it would come from the city budget.
Would be a carve out?
Yeah, just carving it out from something else. Yes.
Is there any check on this at all? I mean, if they come in and say, okay, we're just going to eliminate the entire school system or something,
Well,
can this?
so according to the language, they can't do anything. They just make recommendations. The auditor would make recommendations to the city council as to what could be done. So they would not have the authority to, end a program or start a program. They would just be given recommendations of how you could save some money in this thing or another. Yes. Purple.
Oh, did we know who would choose the audit consultant?
That is not listed in the ordinance language. They do have a listing of, I can pull it up, of requirements, qualifications. So they need to be an independent third-party entity with extensive experience in government efficiency, knowledgeable in fiscal and budget analysis, public administration, municipal finance, and fiscal practices. The city may not contract with anyone who is connected to the council, basically. So there's nothing listed specifically in there as to who they're going to choose. I would assume that the city council would go through that process.
Normally when I get a bid on something, it's sort of a bid and I know how much I'm going to pay, or at least maybe I don't, maybe they give a clause saying could be 15% more. Is there anything to keep them to $5 million? Could somebody hire, say, auditors who charge $50 million or $500 million? I mean,
so
it just says estimated, right?
In the ordinance language, it does not list costs. This is what the city estimated it as. I'm assuming, again, if the city were to do it, they would make some kind of contract with contingencies and timelines when they do that, but it is not yet listed here in that language.
Do you have any idea where they got those numbers from?
Actually, no,
5
I
million
don't.
is an estimate?
No.
But it did come from people who
came
work
from-
for the city?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm guessing the city attorney's office.
Okay, well that helps, just knowing it actually came from somebody in the
Yes.
city and not
So-
from this petition group, for example.
No, it did not come from the petition group. That is the city's estimate. Yes.
When you mentioned possible cost savings, was that the city's estimate as well?
No, that was proponents' estimates.
And is that based on other cities doing a similar process? I mean, where does that savings come from? What if there's none?
Yeah, there
It's
could
not
be.
a guarantee.
There is no guarantee. That came from the proponents of the guy who runs the political action committee, the Citizens for Accountable Austin. I know he was a former aide for Ellen Troxler, like he has some government experience, and I believe he has referenced other cities that have done this. I couldn't name which ones they were though. But yeah. Yes.
So the word efficiencies kind of implies to me places where we think we're actually using, truly like wasting money.
Yes.
And so would something like this lead more to that sort of thing rather than what could become like a big political thing about let's just get rid of this program that helps all these people and let's, you know, that sort of thing where that seems more political than like an efficiency, you know?
Yes, so I think surrounding these rumors, it's become more of a political thing, but
Because efficiency is kind of a mom and apple pie thing, and it sounds good, who would go for efficiency, but is it really efficiency? Is it
Yeah.
really-
so we would just have to look at the language itself and see what that says. Because yeah, like all these outside people are trying to listen to a big political mess, and you can, interpret that whichever way you want. I will say that the main goals in this language, they emphasize cost savings and reduce tax burdens and or increase the quality or quantity of services. But you get the heavy idea that it's really about saving money. So that could then be used in a number of ways. But again, like you're just getting into like the rumor mill of what's going to happen. I don't know. Yeah.
So the way it currently exists is there are internal and external audits, but it's
Yes.
usually just by a department here and there because they only have a limited budget.
Yes.
And that would be the difference is this will be a big, we're going to look at
Yes.
every single thing
Everything
at
all
once.
at once.
Instead of piecemeal per year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because there are audits that go on, is what I wanted to
Yes.
confirm. We have audits.
And the current city auditor, will research which areas she thinks need to be audited and will submit that to the council for approval, and they say yes, and then they will go and do those audits. Yes.
Why not just give the money to the auditor's department and let them do what they need to do? What's the difference?
I don't know if there has been any kind of past push for that. I know there has been some people in and around city government for the past few years, like, milling around with this idea. I don't know if they ever pushed for the city to use their own auditor. I think the writers of this prop really wanted an outside independent group to do it. Again, just because government transparency, so remove it from the council and that.
Isn't one of the criticisms that the estimated cost is sort of open-ended? And it's not known really what it might come out to?
From the way I see it from that is because the ordinance is not detailed on a timeline or a scope, I think the writers are assuming that council will then make those decisions after this is passed. It's hard to make that estimate based on what we have available now. So again, you're trusting council to be able to make a good contract with whatever auditor they're choosing. And, that's a thing. But yeah, because there is no timeline laid out in here, unless there is a timeline laid out in some kind of future contract, I can't tell you how long it will take or not. And then obviously, if it takes longer, it might be more. Or what if an auditor uncovers something in the wastewater management system and then they have to use more money? I don't know. So, yeah, there's a lot of unknowns. other questions? Okay. Let's move back up to the bonds. There are 7 bond packages on this ballot. They total almost $1 billion. That is a lot of money. They will be funded from general obligation bonds and paid for by property taxes. If all of them pass, let's see. The city anticipates raising the property tax rate by 2 cents per $100 evaluation of a property during the life cycle of the bonds. So they estimate that cycle to be about 6 years. So for example, if you have a house valued at $300,000, you should expect an increase of $60 a year. I believe if it's a $600,000 house, it's a $120 increase. A $900,000 house will be $180 per year increase.
That's if all these bonds.
That's if all of them pass. So that gives you an idea of like if fewer pass, it's going to be less. And you know, with bonds, they're probably not going to take out all the bonds all at once, but it will be spread out. So the first one on the list is Prop A. It deals with affordable housing. It is the largest of the bonds. It is $250 million. This money will be divided between 4 existing city programs. $100 million will go towards land acquisition for future affordable housing projects. And that will be funded to the Austin Housing Finance Corporation, which is a nonprofit city corporation for buying land. And they can either develop it themselves or partner with for-profit or nonprofit organizations to build new housing stock. There's $94 million to the rental housing development assistant projects. This one buys and develops housing specifically for rental properties. It could buy existing property and renovate it. Also, they can partner with public and private organizations. There's the acquisition and development homeownership program. That's $28 million. That goes specifically to build housing for people to buy rather than rent. And then lastly is $28 million to the Go Repair program. That is a program that partners with local nonprofits to repair homeowners' homes if they cannot afford it. So it's up to like $15,000 in repairs. So that could be anything from like siding, roofing, AC, flooring issues for people who can't afford to fix their homes. So this covers like some homeowners, some renters, some new stuff, some old stuff. And it's the big one. Any questions on that one?
And it's all just affordable housing.
Yes. Although, like the city does do partnerships with developers to like add affordable housing to, you know, an apartment complex or something like that. So it may not be specifically all going to build only affordable housing, but it may be putting affordable housing in an apartment building that's going to be built, something like that. But for like the land acquisition ones, like that's city-owned land that then can be used. Yeah, so the city will use different means to encourage developers to produce affordable housing. Yes.
About a third of the way down. Finding loans and grants for affordable housing purposes. That's not a typo. It didn't mean funding. It's not housekeeping. Finding, not funding loans and grants.
Oh, that might be a typo.
No, applying for potential grants.
I would think looking for more, yeah, but.
Are you looking at the ballot language?
Yeah, I'm looking at this and wondering, we had Proposition I, like to clean up non-substantive.
So you're saying finding loans and grants for affordable housing purposes?
I'm questioning whether we know that's finding, not funding.
That might be funding. I might have to go back and look into that.
I can't find it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10th line down. Permitted by law, finding lodging grounds.
Let me look, I can actually look. It's funding, it is funding.
It is.
Thank you for finding that.
That's a big difference.
I am going to put that back in and get that fixed. Thank you. Yes?
Can I ask a question just on right above where, before we got to Proposition A, you were talking about the total burden on the average,
Yes.
average homeowner. So I just want to make sure I understand correctly. So for example, if a homeowner has a house worth $300,000, you could say, okay, $60 times 6 is $360. That's the estimated total amount they're going to pay extra forever. It's not like 60 for 6 years and then after that a little bit less or something like that.
That's what they're saying.
Okay.
They have an estimated 6 years.
Okay.
Estimate. Yes?
With the, about the low-income housing?
Yes.
So if an apartment complex gets that money to do that, it seems kind of vague, so like, how long does that low-income housing have to be there?
It depends on, currently, I believe they make agreements with each development. But there are guidelines that the city neighborhood housing and development program. They have guidelines for partnering with developers to do that. So it really just depends on the development. I mean, it could be 10 units for 40 years, it could be 5 units for 10 years, it really depends.
Because it seems like when you're voting on this, it would be easy to make the assumption that it's forever.
Yeah,
And
so
they
not always.
Voters should at least know that the details would have to be worked out.
Yes, yes, it would. And that kind of brings up a good discussion on, you know, if you know that affordable housing means something to you, and you know that there's a development happening in your area, and you want affordable housing in there, like go to your city council member and push for those longer terms. So, yes.
So none of this money is specific to homeless.
So the rental housing development assistant projects, some of their work does address homelessness.
But it's no
Yeah.
specific amount.
No. So yeah, the only specific amounts go to the programs, and then those programs decide how to use that money
Okay.
based on whatever projects they're working on.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Maybe I'm not very well educated on affordable housing, but I tend to think of the beneficiaries of affordable housing as renters, not buyers. So can you shed any light on why they also included the buying of homes?
So, well, for example, for the Go Repair program, you're keeping people from being displaced. And if they move, like they may be able to afford where they're living now, but they can't afford to live somewhere else. But their home is in a state of disrepair that it's unlivable. So that keeps people in their homes and prevents them from having to pay higher rents elsewhere. Now, as for the purchasing of homes, so if you have a large population which in another city could afford to purchase homes, they would get out of that rental market. Instead, all of these people are crowding in this rental market, and that makes the demand for rental housing even higher than it normally would be. So this helps to get people into what the city is calling long-term housing, so that they can, you know, start to develop wealth and be more stable. So overall, getting more people into permanent homes also helps the number of rental units that the city needs. So like that.
Just as an example, I believe, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but like when Mueller, they had to have, I think it was 10% that they sold as affordable.
Yes.
So 10% of them were priced at a different amount.
And then there are rules for those units as well,
Yeah,
so
you
that
had to earn a certain
yeah,
amount
the
and-
people who bought those homes couldn't then just flip them. They had to live in them for a certain amount of time, and then when they sold them, they had to keep them available for other affordable housing needs, so they couldn't make a giant profit off that house. That was part of the agreement.
Right.
So that kind of goes back with what we were talking about earlier with the affordable units in existing developments or things like that.
I'm asking this out of ignorance of how these bond programs work.
Yes.
But do the cost for administering this, this kind of huge effort, are they included in the bond? Is that, for the employees paying?
So I believe that's covered by, like, the city funds the basic needs for the programs. They're paying all of the employees and stuff, and these would go to the projects.
Okay.
So, for the programs and the projects. That is a good question. It may go toward paying people as well. I'm not sure. That is a good question.
It would take a lot of people to do this.
I do know that the league met with the Neighborhood Housing and Community Development Department, which runs, I believe, this acquisition and development homeownership program and the Go Repair program. And they may also work with the rental housing development assistance. And I don't know, I would say they probably have about 8 staff. So if that gives you an idea of like the size and scale of the people implementing that. The Austin Housing Finance Corporation is a separate entity. I'm not exactly sure how many people work there.
Thank you.
Any more questions on this one? Okay. Let's talk about Prop B, which deals with libraries and cultural centers. So this money would be divided between several libraries and cultural centers in the city. So 56.5 million would go to, would be divided between the Mexican American Cultural Center, the Asian American Resource Center, the Carver Museum, and the Mexicarte Museum. There's also 35.5 million for branch library renovations throughout the city, and then also possibly to convert the Falk Central Library into an extension of the Austin History Center. I've heard there may be some issues with that. There's 25 million to build a new Doherty Arts Center. That's south of the river. And then there's also 12 million for creative spaces, acquisition and improvements to creative spaces. So that's a little vague. So just as rent for housing has gone up, rent for commercial space and performing arts space has gone up. And there have been a lot of performing arts groups and theaters and galleries that have had to close because they cannot afford their spaces. So this would be like a kind of a public support of some of those facilities. I know there are a bunch of small theater groups that would really like that. So that's where all of that money would go. Are there any questions on that?
Yeah, I don't know if you even know the answers. There's some reason they didn't put the library as one bond and the cultural as another.
I think they just wanted to stick them together because otherwise
Because then
we
they
already
could
have
maybe
7.
get it approved.
Yeah.
Get them all, I don't,
Yeah.
some of this retro.
Yes.
Is the Falk, so last year, I know that the Central Library moved to.
Yes.
Is the Falk the old location?
Yes. And it is right next to that like old 1911 building that hosts the Austin History Center. So the History Center, and that was the original Austin Library back in the day. And then they built the Falk, and now that one has moved to the new Central Library, and now the Austin History Center would like to expand and use that building. I've heard some things that like their original plans might not work, so that's a little up in the air, but they would still like to use that building somehow. So that's what we're looking at. Yes?
Is there any place where you can figure out how much each one of these would cost us?
Yes.
In taxes?
Oh, in taxes?
Yeah. Or do we have to do the math ourselves?
I think we have to do the math ourselves because it is not listed anywhere that I can find. They basically give you the all or nothing. We could divide it proportionally by numbers. Come up with that.
No, but this is the biggest one, so you have to figure out percents, I guess.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you would like later, we can do the math. It's going to take me a while. Yes?
Are replaced hourly, do they mean keep it where it is and make a bigger, better one? Or do they mean stick it someplace like everything's getting shoved south because they can't afford to be, you know what I mean? Like it sounds good, but they're really just going to get rid of the hourly and send it somewhere that.
That's a good question. I haven't actually found that. I'll probably look closer into info from Doherty, because I'm sure that, I know that each of these culture centers and museums like push to get some of this money, so they might have said like why and what their plans are. So I do not know. Good. Okay, Prop C deals with Parks and Recreation. This is 149 million total. 45 goes to parkland acquisition, and this is in a few different areas around town. The big one is a destination park in Oak Hill. Sounds like a bigger park. Lions Municipal Golf Course, and then also buying more land for infill parks and green belts. So there's parks here and there. The next one is aquatics. So they want to build a new pool at Colony Park in East Austin, and they want to do renovations or replacements to existing pools around the area. Let's see. Yeah, so the guidelines for that are like whichever pools are in most need of help. There's also $25 million for parkland improvements. For existing parks, greenbelts, neighborhood parks, all over the place. They specifically mention Guerrero Park and Trevino Park on like the east side, and downtown squares. Building renovations is $21.5 million, so that's renovating existing facilities at parks. A lot of it is like fixing roofs and windows and weather-related things, and then also making them ADA compliant because they're old. And then infrastructure for $17.5 million for infrastructure to playscapes, trails, parking lots, roadways, athletic fields, and cemeteries. So a lot of this is like general maintenance. Some of it's like new stuff, but a lot of it's just like taking care of the things we already have. Any questions on those?
Do you know what the destination park for Oak Hill is? Is that like a Slitter Bond?
No, I think it's more like one of those big metropolitan parks where there's lots of trails and stuff.
Oh,
Is what I've like got from reading it. You know, like hiking and things. So that would be southwest. You know, because there's like one on the east side. There's a big park way on the west
Maybe
side.
it is part of that ballot crown trail.
I wonder if that trail leads there, if it goes that far.
I don't think it goes that far west.
Not
Yeah,
Not yet.
I know it's ultimately going.
Oh, yeah, they want
somewhere.
to send that trail everywhere. Any other questions on parks? Yes.
As far as maintenance, isn't some of that already in the budget? Why do we need a bond for maintenance?
I think for them, it's just like the normal budget isn't enough, like it's deferred maintenance, and it's like too big to just handle. Like if the roof is 40 years old, they need a new roof on this park bathroom, whatever. I think it's like, this is above and beyond the normal maintenance. Like it's just old. Okay. Proposition D deals with flood mitigation, open space, and water quality protection. It's $184 million. I think the last year we voted on a bond to handle this kind of issue was like 10 years ago, something like that. So this is divided between $112 million for drainage and stormwater projects, and these are like all over the city. So storm drain improvements, stream bank stabilizations, low water crossing improvements, and buyouts in flood-prone areas. So, as you know, there have been some areas in town that get repeatedly flooded, and I think the city is like, we're done with that. We don't want to deal with that anymore. The other part is $72 million for acquisition of water quality protection land. So we have a lot of areas that feed into creeks and the river and the aquifers, and they want to have land that's specifically designated to protect that. So open space land around Austin. Any questions on that one? Okay. So Prop E is a $16 million bond for Health and Human Services. It's specifically to build a health service facility in Dove Springs. And actually, Mary, where'd she go? She did the research on this for our voter's guide. Would you like to share anything about this?
Well, it's on city-owned land, and we have to buy land for it. And there's already a clinic out in Dove Springs, but it provides medical care. And this would be a complementary services like immunizations, daycare, after-school programs, and stuff like that to complement the medical care that people are getting. And right now, they are in the recreation center that is near the clinic, and they want to build a separate space for their programs and activities.
Okay. Yeah, like there's going to be immunizations, there's a WIC clinic, neighborhood center.
Employment support,
yeah.
stuff like that.
Things like that. That's $16 million. And I think you said traditionally this has been kind of an underserved area.
Yes.
Even in southeast Austin. So that's, I believe, the smallest of the bonds. Is there any questions about that one? Yes.
Yeah, so, okay, this, if I understand correctly, is to purchase the building, basically. But
Yeah, your building.
how about staffing it? I mean, where does the money come from to pay for the people who work there? Or are these people who currently work in the existing building?
I don't think that there are any provisions for staff. I didn't see that. But there is existing staff right now that are in the recreation center and in different locations.
So they would just move?
Yeah, and that was another thing that they said was that some of the services that people access, it can take them over a couple of hours to go by bus to get to those places. So they're trying to bring everything together under one roof.
Oh, okay, so there's staff working some of these things all over the place that would be in one place.
Right, and this way it would be right in their neighborhood and they wouldn't have the transportation hassles that they have now.
Okay, so in theory, no additional spending for staff, it's really only a need to...
I didn't see that language in the ordinance. It's just the bricks and mortar.
Okay, and maybe this is Texas and I don't really know, but isn't it usually county services that do this, that do public health? And
Yes,
not the
counties
city?
do, but the city does do some things, isn't it? Isn't it like a
Well,
hospital district?
the counties are responsible for public health or for the health care of their citizens. But in Texas, your income has to be 17% of the federal poverty guideline, which is less than $100 a month, probably. I mean, I don't know what that is, but it's very, I mean, you can't survive on 17% of the federal poverty guideline.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So even though
So
they
the
are
city would do this
responsible for-
in addition to what the county, it's like the city wants to expand what the county already offers?
No, the county does not offer these.
The county doesn't offer immunizations?
They do out in county clinics, but this is a
Not
clinic in
the
the city.
county.
Yeah.
Oh, weird, okay.
Austin Public Health is responsible for them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it is, okay.
How does the Dell Medical Center programs fit in with this? Because I know they're going to be going out into the community.
They are, yeah. Well, if there are residents and medical students, they would actually go to the clinic. But I do know that Dean, what's his name, Dean Johnson, he is very aware of the social determinants of health, and he plans to get the students out into the community to learn more about, their actual living conditions.
Do they help pay for any physical structures,
No, I don't think that's part of it. Mm-mm.
All right, almost done, we got 2 more. Prop F deals with public safety. It's 38 million. 25 of that goes to EMS station renovations. And then the other 13 million goes to fire station renovations. So these are all existing facilities. They're not building new ones. It's just to make sure everything's good and in working condition. Any questions on those? All right, last one. Prop G, transportation infrastructure, is 160 million. I first want to say that I know we did pass a bond in 2016 about transportation. The difference between that one and this one is that one dealt mainly with main corridors in the city and updating corridors like Burnett Road or Lamar, Riverside. This deals with little projects like all over the city, and it does not overlap with those corridor projects. So you're not paying for the same thing. These are separate issues. The bulk of that money goes to street reconstruction. That's 66.5 million. So reconstruction, rehabilitate existing streets in poor condition, including sidewalks and curbs around them. There's 50 million to replace the Redbud Trail Bridge, which crosses Lady Bird Lake on the west side. I believe it's the one that goes to Westlake. Yeah. It's near the dam. It's really old. It's not meant to be used this long. 20 million for sidewalk rehabilitation. Again, that's all over the city to make them ADA compliant. And they're using the 2016 sidewalk master plan to guide which ones they want to do. And they're focusing on whichever projects are the highest priorities. There's 15 million for the Vision Zero transportation safety plan. So that's safety at intersections and pedestrian safety. Signals and technology is 4.5 million. So that's upgrades to signals, controllers, firmware, communication systems for intersections and signals. There's 3 million to urban trails. So the city wants to create this big trail network that connects with streets and cities so people can use trails in their commute as they get across town. And then there's 1 million for a neighborhood partnering program. So say you live in a neighborhood and you want to get some change to a street in your neighborhood, you can partner with the city to get funding for that. So small to medium scale projects. Yes.
I wanted to make one comment and then ask a question.
Yes.
The comment is that the city suddenly showed up in my neighborhood and built sidewalks. I've lived there 30 years. It surprised the heck out of me because we've been asking for sidewalks for the whole 30 years. And they just all of a sudden did it on certain streets that are sort of walking corridors. And it is great. I mean, I can go walking at night and there's a white sidewalk to walk on. I don't have to trip on things in the street and stuff. So anyway, that part was a surprise to me that it was nice. The question is, did the new signal installations include the signals that sense when there's not any traffic on the main road and automatically let the side roads go?
That was a good question.
I'm
not sure,
I've asked
but I'm
for those
assuming.
a lot of times, and I've been told they're very expensive. We can't do that. And so sometimes you end up sitting for 8 or 10 minutes at an empty intersection because the light won't change.
Let me see if that is mentioned in this resolution from the city. I'm not seeing that. Though I would have to assume that that would be in there at some point because
Some of the little
like
neighborhood
rails.
entrances onto big roads like Burnt Road and Lamar and stuff, that would just be
I know that
an
some of that.
astonishing time saver.
I know that some of that was part of the corridors, the corridor bond from 2 years ago. That was part of some, so they were trying to put those into some major traffic areas. I do wonder about that because this seems like, from what I read, it's a lot of neighborhoods, smaller areas, not as huge congested areas that they're doing all these repairs and stuff in. So I don't know if they need, and because it's only 4.5 million, it seems like a smaller amount. I really don't know.
I just
Maybe we
wonder
can look
because
into
I live near a street that's a small street going out into Burnt Road, and I see people do left on reds. And,
they
you know,
don't
on
wait.
a Sunday morning or something when there's no traffic anywhere, that just get frustrated sitting there at the light and they'll turn left on red or you know, cut through the parking lots and, you know, pull up to a light and then after a few minutes back up and try to find some other way out. Yeah.
Go around to the gas station or something, yeah. Yeah. So, that's a good question. I'm sure we could dig in further. But I wonder if, I bet that was included in the previous bond, which they are working on right now, but I wonder where we can find that out. Okay. Any other questions?
If we're replacing a bridge to Westlake, is Westlake going to help out?
So technically, this is still like our property, our side. And I've also heard complaints like, you know, some of the people that live over there don't want to have it or whatever. At some point, the bridge isn't going to last. Right. The bridge needs to be replaced. I do not. Huh?
Is this called the low water bridge?
I don't know if it's called that. I didn't know it had a name until I saw this.
It's
The Emmett Shelton Bridge / Redbud Trail Bridge.
Yeah,
It is very low.
very low.
Yes.
Who oversees all of this? Every time we give the city money for bond after bond after bond, who is overseeing that it's spent properly, spent on time, et cetera?
Yes. So the city manager implements almost all of these, and then the city manager divides the money to where it's supposed to go. So for example, the affordable housing programs, they will go to specific groups.
But
So
who's overseeing that it's actually being done correctly?
the city manager.
One person?
Well, the city manager's office, who has staff. But yes, it's the city manager that's doing all of this. I mean, and he reports to city council. So there is city council.
So as each bond, we spend all this money, we never see our taxes go down. You know, we give them $1 billion and they spend it, and then it's over in 10 years or something, our taxes never go down. Is that
Yes.
because you've got another bond coming and it takes its place, or nobody pays attention?
It is because you get more bonds and also because property tax values go up. So, for example, for the property taxes, we're taxed from the city and AISD and ACC and the county. Health, yeah, there's health districts with all those districts. And then for each of those areas, those tax money, the tax dollars get split between, what is it, operations, budget, and then debt services. So the debt services just pay off the debt that the city has already accumulated from previous bonds. So that's what our $60 that we're paying every year, that goes towards paying off the debt. So, and they don't take out all the bonds all at once, so that can be spread out. So yeah, your tax bill goes up and down all the time.
And there's new bonds very frequently.
Yes, and there are whole big issues about how property taxes are handled in the state and the city and all of that. And So that's something to consider. This is a lot of money over a long period of time. You have to decide, is this worth it to you? Is it worth it to your neighbors? Ultimately, you're deciding. Yes?
Do these usually pass? Is this expected to pass? I just moved to Austin from about 12 years on the West Coast. And so do these sometimes miss? I mean, how?
Yeah, sometimes they do. So for example, we had like a $60 million affordable housing bond like 5-6 years ago. It did not pass, and then there was one later that did pass. So it really just depends. It depends on a lot of factors. It depends on voter education, if they know about it.
Light rail.
Oh yeah, light rail failed.
Yeah, failed twice, right?
Twice.
It also has to do with voter turnout.
Yeah, voter turnout.
If we got more people to vote, we might know what it should be.
Yeah, it depends on a lot of factors. It is not a given that these will pass.
They tend to mostly.
Yeah, I would say they pass more often than not. But again, I think of that big light rail twice, and it was like, nope.
Didn't ACC fail 3 times before some of those bonds passed?
I don't know.
For that whole big complex? That didn't go the first.
Oh, you mean for Highland Mall?
Yeah, it wasn't the first rodeo.
Right.
That had been before I was here.
But that's kind of common for things to have to come up a couple of times
Yeah.
before.
Sometimes that happens where you see the same thing on the ballot multiple times.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Thank you so much. I know this is long. This is a big ballot.
If you'd like to download this handout that Dixie has prepared, she's made it available as a Google Doc, and the link to it is on our Facebook event page. Also, I'll put it on our website. I meant to do that by today, but I'll put it on there tonight, and you can download it there. So thanks for coming, and thanks to Dixie for presenting this to us today.
Thank you.
Do you help share?